Magnesium has become one of the most talked about nutrients for supporting healthy aging and improving sleep. We're seeing influencers, biohackers, and wellness experts recommending it all over social media. But there are lots of different types of magnesium on the market, all with different claims attached. So today I'm joined by Dr. Elena Seranova, who founded her own supplements company and who, with a master's degree in neuroscience and a PhD in stem cell biology and autophagy, certainly knows her stuff when it comes to the science of aging and the research around how best to support our bodies as we get older. We explore why magnesium becomes more important as we age, the best forms for sleep and nervous system support, and why some supplements might not deliver results. Plus, we touch on diet and the so-called anti-aging supplement NMN, which brought Elena into the supplements market in the first place. So if you've ever wondered which form of magnesium to take, when to take it, and what it could realistically do for sleep, this conversation should help make sense of it. Dr. Elena, it is good to have you back. I always really enjoy our conversations because you like a bit of a debate, as I do. So I really appreciate that about you.
Absolutely. I think that's the only way forward when it comes to science and when it comes to actually clarifying what is really important for our health and our well-being.
We are going to be digging into the topic of magnesium supplements today. Those of us who follow different experts on social media, we hear a lot about magnesium as being an essential mineral and one that might be more difficult for us to get enough of through our modern diets and modern farming methods and so on. The confusion creeps in, I think, at least for me, around all the different types of magnesium, because there seem to be so many. And then you're thinking, well, which form is best to take for what? So, big one here to kick off with, but can you explain what they are and the difference between what they do for us?
Yes, absolutely. So there are multiple forms of magnesium. They are divided in two major categories. So one is organic form and one is inorganic form. Now, the inorganic forms of magnesium, such as magnesium oxide, for example, would be the cheapest one that are being used in supplements, but also the ones that have the lowest absorption. Not only that, but they also could have more side effects, such as indigestion, diarrhea, and so on when you take it. Let's say you want to absorb a certain amount of magnesium, and with magnesium oxide, it could go as low as 4 to 7% absorption when you take it. You take 100 mg of magnesium oxide and you will only absorb 7. So actually, in order to absorb around 200, 300, 400 milligrams of magnesium, which is the recommended dosage on a daily basis for most humans, you will have to take so much of it, and then this will cause the indigestion.
And inorganic, Elena, sorry to interrupt you there, but just the difference between inorganic and organic. So magnesium oxide is inorganic. Does that mean it's not biologically compatible with what our body needs? Or
magnesium has different forms, and that's the reason why we say, for example, magnesium oxide, magnesium glycinate. The magnesium molecule, which is a cation, it's basically attached to different kind of molecule. So what happens with those compounds is that whenever they are inorganic, they have a form that is basically not fit for absorption by the human body.
Okay, it's not easily absorbed.
Exactly. So it could be used. So magnesium is actually an element that is being used in multiple industries as well, and in multiple products. It's not only for human consumption, but it could be used as a reagent in different kind of manufacturing processes and so on. So magnesium is an abundant element on our planet with many, many forms, but not all of them are actually positioned to be absorbed from the human body. However, because some of those forms, the inorganic ones, are cheap and they're actually not that dangerous, they are still being used in the supplement industry, unfortunately.
Got it. Yeah, because I picked a magnesium supplement up from a pharmacy chain when I was kind of desperate one day. I had a really bad headache, and magnesium often helps. And it was the only sort of store open later on a Sunday, and it didn't say what type of magnesium it was on the back at all. It was just magnesium. So I thought, that's a bit strange, but it does happen.
Yeah, so they don't even clarify the type of magnesium sometimes, which for me is like very, very
Yeah.
weird, obviously, to do this to your consumer, right? So one popular form of magnesium lately is magnesium threonate for the brain.
Yes. Is that organic? Would you describe that as organic?
That is organic. Yes, that is
Yeah.
organic. But I've
Okay.
seen also a patented version of it that actually this company, I don't know if you know which one I'm talking about or not, but we're not going to name it here. But basically, this company claims that their patented form of magnesium threonate is the only one that gets into the brain. And this is simply not true, not only in this particular category of magnesium threonate, but we also have studies already that show that magnesium bisglycinate, for example, also gets into the brain, and I think taurate as well. So they did a clinical study with their patented compound too, and what was shown in that paper is that they had increased secretion of magnesium via urine with this patented compound, but actually, if you look at the rest of the data in that paper, there is the difference between their patented version and normal magnesium threonate is not statistically significant when it comes to the other biomarkers that they were looking at. So I was very, very surprised to see this because they seem to be making all these bold claims. And actually, when you dig into the data, there is nothing there. And this also opens the wider discussion about how we actually track the magnesium and how we actually know that it's working. So the reason this is so tricky is that we can measure the magnesium in the serum and we can measure the magnesium in the red blood cells. But the problem is that as we age, like we have magnesium in all of our tissues. It's a very, very important molecule, and it's implicated in over 600 cellular reactions in the cell. And what happens is that we have different storage amounts in different tissues. For example, magnesium is very important for the bones. And then in the bones, we also have storage of magnesium. This cannot be measured. There is no test for this, unfortunately, for humans.
Right.
So we measure the magnesium in the serum, for example, right, which is the most common and cheap test to do. But what happens is that you might be seeing normal levels. However, with age, because we absorb less and less magnesium, so our digestive system is losing the ability to absorb maximally of what we take from supplements and from food even. So what happens, you will see a normalized test, you will see normal values in the serum of the patient. However, the bone storage of magnesium has already been depleted after some age, and then you won't be able to track this at all. It's not showing. So there are more specialized tests that you can do. For example, you can test with and without additional magnesium intake. Like in some medical cases, they would do that. They would load the patient with magnesium either with IV or with oral consumption, and then they would measure the levels in the blood, but also the levels in the urine. And then, let's say you give someone some magnesium, and then you measure the levels of magnesium in the urine, and you see that actually it's really, really low. The secretion is really, really low. And this means that the kidneys are actually holding so much to that magnesium. So then what we can extrapolate from this is that actually there are lots of tissues in this patient that actually have a high deficiency of magnesium. So they really need magnesium. And that's the reason why the kidneys are holding on so much to it, because they're trying to replenish the levels of magnesium that are deficient. So
it kind of blows my mind that kidneys are that intelligent. The intelligence of the cells in the human body and how they all communicate. And that's just mind-blowing, actually.
Yes, absolutely. Like I've been fascinated by, the human body and the human brain and what it can do for many, many years. And, one of those reasons why I kept on studying, throughout the years, and basically spent 11 years in university, if you count like all my degrees, including the PhDs, because because I just couldn't get enough of it. No. And when I was studying, it was actually very easy. Every day it was easy. It wasn't a challenge because I would just be completely, fascinated by the processes, the biological processes that I was studying.
And you've got the clear advantage of being able to better comprehend these biological processes than a lot of us and help to sort of filter that information and deliver the need to knows. So based on your research, what are the best forms of organic magnesium for us to take and why?
Yes, absolutely. So this is a great question. And actually, the answer is also a bit complicated because we do need multiple forms of magnesium. And we also need to understand why we're actually taking them. What is the reason? So stemming from my research and stemming from the brain processes specifically, sleep is super, super important for our performance, for our cognitive agility, and our cognitive ability and function. What happens in the evening is that nowadays, there are a lot of, let's call them stressors in the environment. So when I say stressors, this could even be light in the evening, artificial light after sunset, because our body is actually, is made in a way where we're actually interpreting all the signals that we're getting, and then the body understands what it needs to do. For example, when it goes dark, when there is sunset, the body gets the message that, it will be time to go to sleep. So what we experience now is that there is a bunch of artificial lights everywhere. And, I live here in Dubai, right? And the skyline is just so bright. There is so much light pollution everywhere. It's a beautiful city. I can't complain. I love being here. But at the same time, what happens is that you have all this bright light. We have a lot of people nowadays that work remotely. So this means that they might be working in different time zones. The majority of my team is in the UK. So whenever it's 9 p.m. for me in Dubai, it's still 5 p.m. for them in London, meaning that, they're still messaging me. And sometimes I have to be responsive, because, especially now with Q4 promotions and whatnot, we have a lot of work. We just launched the new magnesium product. So there are lots of things going on. So what happens is that you have light pollution. You might be having different kind of mental stressors as well. And this increases your cortisol levels, which is not a natural process in the evening because you have to be relaxing in the evening so you can start preparing your body to go to sleep. However, if the cortisol levels are rising, let's say after sunset, this is my rule of thumb for a lot of things. Like I don't eat after sunset and I'm trying not to be stressed out after sunset. So then cortisol is being secreted. When you have high levels of cortisol, you're not going to be able to produce the neurotransmitter that is called GABA. And GABA is an essential neurotransmitter that basically relaxes your brain. If there is not enough GABA being produced in the brain, this means that the brain will not be able to produce melatonin fully. And this means that you might start having problems either falling asleep or staying asleep as well. And usually is the staying asleep part the one that troubles a lot of people. So they go to sleep and then after 2, 3, 4 hours, they wake up and it's hard for them to go back to sleep. The first step in order to address this is to bring up the GABA production. And this means you need to bring down the cortisol levels. So and people might be taking different kinds of magnesium in the evenings, and actually they don't work, and they don't know why. They don't produce any effect because magnesium is claimed to have, relaxing effects on you.
Yeah.
However, if your GABA stays low and your cortisol stays high, you're not going to get the benefits of the magnesium. So when taking magnesium for relaxation in the evening, if you're taking it by itself, you're not going to have the effect that you would have otherwise if you bring down the cortisol levels and you bring up the GABA levels. So what we did is we also added lemon balm and L-theanine into this blend that actually increase the GABA neurotransmitter. We have 3 forms of organic magnesium that are all necessary for us. So magnesium glycinate, magnesium taurate, and magnesium lactate. So these 3 forms, I believe that they're one of the most essential ones. Perhaps not all, because we also also need a couple of other forms as well. For the cardiovascular system, there is evidence that it's very essential for the heart system, for blood pressure regulation. And then it fuels a bunch of other processes, like hundreds of processes, magnesium glycinate in particular. I personally believe that magnesium glycinate is the one that is the most important for the human body. And then we also have taurate and lactate, which contributes to the relaxation of basically the nervous system, the muscles, and also the cardiovascular system. And in ICU, and this is also like another paradox that I recently found out about in the ICU, when you have a patient that is about to, that has like very high blood pressure, is about to go into cardiac arrest, and they don't respond to any other meditation. As a last form of defense, they basically give them an IV of magnesium, which doesn't make any sense because you can give them much earlier so they don't go into the stage. But it's super, super efficient to actually regulate blood pressure and cardiovascular function. The same happens with pregnant women when they also have hypertension that might be causing seizures as well in some women. And then they give them magnesium as a last line of defense, which doesn't make any sense. But basically, this definitely demonstrates that magnesium is very important, specifically the magnesium glycinate.
And I'm not hearing threonate, which will surprise a lot of people because that seems to be one of the more dominant ones that we hear about, particularly with sleep. So why?
We also are looking at launching another product, another magnesium, which will be the morning magnesium blend that will be containing the threonate. I'm still undecided on the supplier because, as I said, I was digging into this and I was not convinced by some patented forms of magnesium threonate specifically. But actually, when you look at the results and you compare side by side what happens with cognitive tests and what happens with brain function, when you compare between magnesium threonate and magnesium glycinate, there is not much difference. And in some tests and some trials, magnesium glycinate seems to be more efficient. Now, I'm not saying that magnesium threonate is not a good ingredient, but again, we go back to the tracing, because we can't trace the magnesium levels in the brain and we can't in humans that are alive, so we can't do a biopsy. We can't slice off the brain and actually analyze the tissue. And the same for the bones, as we said, right? So actually we don't have conclusive evidence about how much it is being increased. And this is where, different cognitive tests are coming in and you basically are measuring the output of the supplementation, not the actual input, because you can't measure the input in terms of the concentration in those specific tissues.
So threonate may be beneficial for sleep and relaxation.
So I think that for relaxation, I'm convinced that glycinate is more efficient, and that's the reason why we put it in the evening formula. Now with threonate, I think that it could have beneficial effect on the brain function overall. So not necessarily the sedative relaxing effect. Sedative is not the right word because glycinate doesn't have sedative effect. It's a relaxing effect. Magnesium threonate doesn't seem to have the same effect. However, it might be beneficial to boost cognitive function in the long term. And that's the reason why we're going to put it actually in a morning formula next year, not in an evening formula, because it doesn't seem to have any effect whatsoever that is relaxing.
Interesting. Okay. And I mean, in terms of the research around around dosing and increasing dosage as we age, because studies are done, they use a specific dosage, and we just seem to get sort of snapshots of information from different studies. It's difficult for people to put together. So we understand that we absorb less as we age, but does that mean people should be increasing dosage as they age as well? What's your guidance and what's the evidence around that?
So there are a couple of things here. And of course, in an ideal world, we would take all the nutrients that we need from food, right? But this doesn't happen. And we can see that in different kinds of food. So magnesium specifically is located in, is present in nuts and seeds, chia seeds, things like that, seaweed, but not all of us are consuming those things on a daily basis. And especially...
Well, I'm about 3/4 chia seeds. So I'm hoping then that I should be getting some good magnesium intake.
Okay.
Eat a lot
Yeah.
of them.
So chia seeds actually have one of the highest concentrations of magnesium. I think,
Interesting.
yeah, I think it's something like maybe 100 mg of magnesium per 100 grams of chia seeds, if I'm not mistaken. So this is
Wow.
actually quite high. If we trace different foods, the nutrient availability that we have nowadays in different foods, vegetables, and so on, even some meat and fish and so on, it's declining because of the of the rapid progress of agriculture, overculturing, things like that. So our food is basically declining in nutrient availability for the past century or so, right? And especially with the modern Western diet, the standard American diet, for example, full of processed foods, and there's hardly any nutrients there. So I looked at the diabetes and obesity statistics recently, and I think last time I looked about a year ago, and it was nearly the assumption was that nearly 80% of adults in the West might be having insulin resistance, which is insane, right? It's
Yeah.
pre-diabetes. And then I looked recently again, and the statistics now say up to 93% of adults in the Western world might be having insulin resistance. So
All adults, not just older.
no, everyone. No, no, just all adults, which is
Yeah.
insane, right? And that's the reason why we keep on getting all these chronic diseases earlier and earlier in life. We even have, children with pre-diabetes now at the age of 12, which is not genetic, and it's just
Yeah.
because of diet. And actually, the other interesting thing is because when you get nutrient deficiencies, like your hormonal system starts falling apart, right? So this has to do with reproductive hormones. It has to do with, overall brain function. I'm very big on the brain, as you know. This is
Yeah.
my scientific sweetheart is the brain. Like I love studying it. But when it comes to other hormones, because it's all tied up together, right? Our
Yeah.
hormonal function from pineal gland in the brain that regulates, for example, melatonin secretion. And again, so this is where the environmental stress comes in, right? So you have bright lights at 8, 9 p.m. in your brain. The pineal gland registers it and says, okay, so it's not time to produce any melatonin yet. And then this also affects thyroid hormones, for example. Now, with regards to the dosage, and as we said already, like we definitely have decreased absorption of various nutrients through the gut as we age, after the age of 30, 40, 50. And this goes hand in hand with the nutritional choices that we make. So in diets that are very low in fiber and very high in processed foods, such as the standard American diet, the gut microbiome is basically very, very dysfunctional. Like it's not functioning well anymore, and this lowers the absorption of all nutrients. So it becomes a negative feedback loop where you're eating junk food, you're not getting any nutrients, and as you go you will be getting less and less and less of them. So for me it's all about the nutrient availability, and then it's also about the possibility of you having the optimal results from your diet. So maybe indeed for some people the plant-based diet would be just fine. For some people that are sensitive and get IBS symptoms from a plant-based diet, they just simply cannot do it. So then we just look at the result. We just look at the output, if you wish,
Yes.
right?
Yes. What works
So
for you? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then it doesn't need to be subjective because we can track, our nutrient deficiencies with multiple blood tests and so on, and we can actually see if it's working or not. And then the other thing that is very, very important is the hormonal function. So what I'm seeing from myself, but also from friends that are also on a carnivore diet, we all have a very high hormonal profile, and it's not going down. The hormones are not decreasing, including the reproductive hormones, for example. The thyroid hormones, they're all working like a clock. And for me, this is a big indication that, we're doing something right. So
Yeah.
yes, definitely evidence-based, very important. No matter what your diet is, just make sure that you're basically tracking it in a proper way, in an objective way, and you're not doing it as a wishful thinking, basically, or for, you have to be conscious about why you're sticking to a certain diet.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes we just have to eat what we love as well if it's nutrient rich, because I can't imagine a world in which it was just mainly meat. Just doesn't switch my lights on. Back to magnesium.
Yes.
And what is the recommendation around dosaging then? Because, you know, I might have somebody who's 30 sitting listening to this and somebody who's 80.
Mm-hmm.
What are the factors they should be figuring in when they're
Yeah,
thinking about
so
dosage?
so this will depend also on whether they have a magnesium deficiency already or not as well. But to start with, like what I would suggest, as with many other supplements, is to basically titrate your dosage and make it in an evidence-based manner. So let's say someone has normal amounts of magnesium in their serum. They don't have a severe deficiency that they know of, because usually with the processes that I described earlier, you know, like you have like low storage of magnesium in the bones and so on. You can't measure it, but there will be other symptoms, right? Especially at an older age, you might be having some frailty episodes, you know, like falling down, hip replacement, things like that. But if we're talking about a normal person, let's say at the age of 30, in their 30s or 40s, the recommended dosage of elemental magnesium is around 300 mg for women and around 400 mg for men. Now, this is a dosage that is recommended if you don't have a severe magnesium deficiency. Even if there is no significant dip in the serum magnesium levels, but you still have many other symptoms, you might increase this dosage to 500 or 600 mg of elemental magnesium, and you have to do it carefully. You have to titrate it because, again, it's very individualized. There is one more test I forgot to mention to you. So basically, there is the red blood cell test of magnesium that you can do. And what will this do is it will basically measure the amounts of magnesium within the cells, within the red blood cells. And this is already a better indicator than the serum test, because you can understand like what is going on in terms of the intracellular magnesium. And this will be closer to the amount of magnesium that is present in other tissues. So that's another test to do as well. Red blood cell magnesium. So
Okay.
now, you know, you can paint the clinical picture. You can understand what's going on, and it will also depend on obviously your diet and other nutrients and supplementation that you're taking, things like that. You can extrapolate from other tests too. So magnesium is important, for example, for electrolyte absorption. So, for example, other molecules like potassium, for example, important electrolyte, we can measure that. This is usually more accurate when measuring in the blood. So then we can see maybe it's too high or too low, and there is, again, like a different clinical picture there, and we can extrapolate what the magnesium levels would be in different tissues, and then we supplement. However, as a rule of thumb, it looks like maybe up to 90% of the population could be deficient in magnesium. So I would recommend to pretty much everyone to supplement with magnesium. This is definitely one of my essential supplements that I'm taking every day for quite some time now. And, you know, like I don't have a reason to stop.
I mean, there are so many supplements now, as you know, and every advocate of a different supplement will say that their one is the critical one. And what we don't have alongside that is a heap of conclusive evidence. I mean, some of the studies that have been done on people who take a multivitamin or something like that don't show benefit in terms of lifespan. Now, there can be varying factors for that. But I mean, why are you convinced we should be supplementing? Because one of the things that we never really get, because we don't get these sort of long-term studies looking at use of certain vitamins over 10, 20, 30, 40 years. We don't have those available to us. So we don't know what over supplementing looks like. We don't know what it looks like when we take a high amount of one thing and how that might impact the body more widely. Why do you think it's safe and to supplement and that we should be doing it?
I think that when it comes to the different magnesium products, first of all, it's very easy to understand when we're overdoing it, especially with forms that have low absorption, the inorganic forms such as magnesium oxide, for example, or even magnesium citrate, because you will start having, digestive issues very, very fast from it. And this would be the warning sign that actually you're overdoing it with magnesium supplementation. And then when it comes to The diet, as we said, it's definitely like the nutrient availability is dramatically decreasing over the past few decades in our body. So we need to, like, I'm very evidence-based in everything that I do. And for myself, I do blood tests twice a year. So I'm sometimes even like more often. So I track everything, and everything goes back to the basics, which is basically the hormonal function and the nutrient availability in the body. So you're screening for that. If something starts decreasing, because that's the thing you mentioned, the World Health Span, right? So this is what we're talking about here, because people see signs of aging, people see decrease in hormonal function, fatigue, decreased energy and focus, and they think that it's a natural process, but actually it's not, because after we peaked hormonally at the age of 25, everything starts decreasing unless we actually do something to offset that decline. And this is basically, there should be a coordinated attack on aging, if you wish. It must be a coordinated approach where, of course, you're having, like a good lifestyle and you have a nice regime. You optimize your sleep, very, very important for recovery. You optimize your diet for nutrient availability, for nutrient density, and then you see the result.
And Elena, my number one, muscle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, we have.
Huge, head to toe benefits. Yeah.
Yeah, because especially after the age of 40, you start feeling the muscle loss basically, because it becomes like very, very evident. And I don't remember if I if I shared this tip with you before, but do you know how to track, especially like with women, like in women, it's very, very easy to track whether you already have sarcopenia and muscle loss already.
No.
So,
Okay.
very simple method. So you take a picture of yourself in let's say in a short dress, right? So you can see your legs. And then you compare your legs as like while you're standing with your legs 10 years ago. And you look at the area around the knees. So if you look at Lauren Sanchez, for example, Jeff Bezos' wife, she looks gorgeous, like all the face is made up and everything, but you look at her knees and they're so, let's say, like wrinkled, and they're changed, and you can see the shape of the muscle being changed
Hope
around
she's
the
not
knee.
watching.
Yeah, I hope so too, to be honest. But but this is the muscle loss. Yes, you can
Yeah.
see it in your
Yeah.
pictures around your knees. It's very, very evident. And that's the reason why we have a quercetin product that is specifically, to combat the muscle loss, because it prevents the accumulation of the senescent zombie cells in your muscles. And then we also optimize the quercetin, just like we do with every product, with vitamin C, so it doesn't get oxidized, and citrus bioflavonoids. So we have a very, very strong quercetin product that is absolutely killing it in its category as well for this reason. You take care of your muscles. Super important in your 40s when you see the aesthetic change, but actually after the age of 50 and 60, like this now becomes a matter of life and death, because now you have more incidents of
does.
frailty and falling down and breaking bones. And then if you look at the statistics of how many people over the age of 70 actually survive a hip replacement surgery, it's not looking good. And this was also my grandmother that passed away after the hip replacement surgery. Like after a few days, she didn't survive it because it's too
Yes.
much stress. She was like 78 and she didn't survive the surgery. Like she never got out of the hospital. So,
Yeah.
that's the reason why prevention is so important. And that's the reason why it's very, very crucial to actually start addressing the decline and offsetting it in your 30s and your 40s. And of course, if you're watching this video and you're already like over the age of 40 or 50, that's fine, because the best time to stop would be now.
And the best way of correcting it is by building your muscle. And there's no other way around that. You can't supplement your way out of muscle loss. It has to be through weight training.
So you need to combine the fitness, the lifestyle, the diet, and the supplementation. Like it's like there is no magic pill yet.
Exactly. I can't let you go without asking about NMN. It's something that I raise every time I speak to you. I mean, that's what brought you through your research into NMN and the benefits for longevity and brain health. That was how you started your business. It has, of course, recently become legally available again in the US as a dietary supplement. Some people might be aware that that was stopped by the FDA while they investigated it, and still are as a potential drug. But it is one that I take along with my parents, and really because I felt the benefits in terms of energy level, sleep quality as well. But it's really the impact on my parents that convinced me to keep taking it. So I take it at a lower dose than them because I am younger and I believe I need less. But they, in particular, it helps with their pain. So my dad has no arthritic pain in his feet if he uses NMN. He had to come off all supplements before an operation a couple of years back, and the pain came back. So he is quite convinced that that's what it is.
Yes.
What I am surprised about, because we first started talking about this a few years ago, and I have been expecting that human evidence to come through more strongly, and it just never quite seems to arrive. So there are a lot of detractors from it saying it's just a waste of money, expensive urine at the end of the day. Why do you think we don't seem to be any further forward than last time we spoke?
Yeah, that's a great point, Claire. So just to clarify, technically, NMN was never completely banned in the US.
Yes.
There was one particular company that received a notice that they can't sell NMN as a food supplement because it's been investigated in a human clinical trial as a drug. This is how efficient it is, right? So then there was a lot of back and forth with the FDA and, with the Natural Products Consumer Association that actually organized a lawsuit against the FDA because they felt like FDA is not doing their best in terms of consumer interests and to have extremely safe supplement being sold in the United States and being available to consumers. So now this has been clarified. And then they said, yes, it is legal to sell NMN as a food supplement in the US. Now, what happens is that when a compound is actually not patentable, you're not going to have a lot of interest when it comes to organizing human clinical trials because, companies always want to capitalize on the human clinical trials. And we do have maybe around 15 human clinical trials on NMN right now demonstrating efficacy and safety. So a few of them are done by private company. A few of them have, published some results as well. But the fact that NMN is an efficient supplement has nothing to do with how much is being investigated, unfortunately. So that's the thing, because basically, if they cannot patent it, they're not interested in pouring more money into it, right? When it comes to the allegations, whether it's something that is a waste of money, we can, again, we can judge by results, right? So we definitely have evidence that NMN is boosting NAD levels in the blood within 15 to 20 minutes of oral intake, right? And that's another thing because people take all this fancy IV drips of NAD and it's basically spiking your NAD for a day and then it goes down again. So it's basically useless.
If it's increasing NAD levels in the blood, I mean, what some people will say was that doesn't necessarily mean it's doing anything anywhere else, it's just in the blood. I mean, how do we know it's having an impact on the cells?
No, we have multiple evidence in different tissues. So we have biopsies from muscle. So it's going into the muscle. We've seen that. We have a very high expression of the NMN cell transporter in the human gut. So we know it's being absorbed and it's going into other tissues as well. And we have clinical data showing that it not only it boosts endurance and VO2 max, which is a biomarker that athletes are using in terms to basically measure their endurance, but also we have cognitive tests showing that actually you do have increased cognitive function with NMN. And I'm involved in a study now that is not published yet that is very, very promising, that is also showing other indications for the human brain, but I cannot disclose this information yet. So maybe next time we're going to talk about that because this is about to be published next year. However, great. I'm convinced about that. And if you look at the the customer testimonials and basically the lifetime value. So people start taking NMN and they just keep on taking it for years, right? Like if it's a good product, like they just keep on coming back because they can feel so much effect. When you said, for example, the your dad not having the pain anymore, right? So the reason for that is because the anti-inflammatory response of the human body is NAD dependent. So that's the reason, right? So NAD is basically a molecule that is fueling so many enzymatic reactions in the body and so many pathways. So it's the anti-aging proteins that are being activated, called sirtuins. Then there is the anti-inflammatory process. Then there is multiple other processes, including autophagy, for example, which is the intracellular clearance mechanism of our body. So all of those things are being activated, and all of those could be seen in results. And also, I have a friend who is a fertility doctor. So actually, she's researching this as well lately, and she's been doing also, she has a clinical trial set up as well in the UK, where they're looking into the different fertility markers. And this is also not published yet, but they're having like such amazing results already with NMN compared to like any other supplements, such as, for example, CoQ10, right? Because CoQ10, in order to reach the Krebs cycle and actually produce any result, there is multiple conversion steps for it. I think it's 7 or 8 steps, while the NMN will convert into NAD into your cells in one single step. And then the NAD will basically fuel everything else.
Looking forward to more trials and evidence coming to light. I mean, do you think it will all boil down to what happens with the FDA at the end of the day? I'm thinking that if it didn't get approval for a drug as a drug because the evidence wasn't strong enough, that potentially crushes the debate.
Yeah, this whole trial is actually, so it's very weird how this issue with the FDA happened, because the molecule that is being investigated in a human clinical trial as a drug is actually not the normal, the common form of NMN. It's some other modified form of this molecule anyway. So whatever claims they're going to have from that human clinical trial when it's being published, it's not going to be applicable to NMN. They somehow managed to squeeze this into the FDA, and this is a whole different conversation, right? And then we had all this mess with the hypothetical ban and whatnot, and all this indecision. The thing here is that you can't really patent a specific, something that is present in the food chain. So there is a lot of ambiguity when it comes to different claims and things like that. So what companies are doing, for example, they either tweak a molecule or they put it in a blend and then they patent a claim that is related to this particular blend, because you can't patent anything that is present in your food, such as vitamin C, for example, right?
So they're not exploring pure NMN, if you like. They're exploring something that has been combined in some way.
Yeah, it would be very difficult from a regulatory perspective to actually apply a specific patent to such a compound. So there will definitely be some sort of a tweak in order to make this work for them.
One to re-examine next year. We'll have you back when you publish your evidence, and hopefully we'll have some more studies to look at that point as well. Dr. Elena, thank you so much. Always enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you for having me.
My thanks to Dr. Elena there for helping explain the difference between those different forms of magnesium and how they might help us. I'm going to link to her social accounts and to her NMN Bio supplements line in the description below, and there's a discount code if you want to check that out. And if you want to keep up with all my latest interviews, episodes and articles around how to age well, there's a link below too where you can sign up for my newsletter so you never miss out. But for now, thank you so much for being here today.